Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another FutureFight Vanguard video. Couple things before we get into our Bermuda deck of the day that we are going to be doing today. Two things. One, thank you guys for staying around, supporting. I really appreciate it so much while I catch up on these last few decks, and then we will be totally caught up, and I will try not to fall behind again. Real life happens sometimes, not much I can say other than that. But number two, I'm going to be working on a second channel soon. I'm really excited about it. I'm doing it with a couple people. And once I get that together, I will be letting you guys know the details about that, probably in a video or something like that. But today we're going to be talking about our next deck going to the Bermuda set of Divas Fiesta. And this deck set actually has a lot of different Bermuda decks that you can build. But today we're actually going to be talking about one of the more popular builds that came out of the Bermuda set, which is the Coral deck list. So Coral in the past has always been a kind of so-so to not that good of a deck, but now because of its new support, it has gotten a lot of traction, and it's just a really good beatdown deck now. And you can beat your opponent up from literally riding to grade 3, and they can just die right there if you get lucky enough. But let's talk about the deck. So we run 7 grade 3s. All of our grade 3s are Coral based. So let's talk about our new Aura Star Coral. So we had a card that was previously called Aura Star Coral as well. So if you're going out to buy these cards or you're copying this deck list, please make sure that you're buying the right Coral, because I definitely don't want you guys to, try to get this Coral or think that it will have the same effect when there's actually 2 different corals. So try to look for this artwork when you're going for your corals, or at least read the effect that states on the card when you're trying to buy the card. But yeah, this is our new Aura Star Coral that came out in this set. It has 2 skills. The first skill is, both skills are pretty good actually. I was going to say one is better than the other, but both of them are equally good. The first one is used more for defense, and the second one is used more for offense. So the first skill is Continuous Vanguard Rearguard Circle. If the number of cards with Coral in your soul is 4 or more, which is pretty easy to obtain in this deck, this unit gets plus 2,000 power permanently. So when it's on your Vanguard, it can become a 13k base, which really helps against like pesky 21k columns and all these things that would normally make good numbers on you that you would have to block for really big. Coral allows you to block for less because you're actually a 13k base and your numbers are different, and your opponent has to make bigger numbers just to make you drop the same amount of shield that you're going to be making them drop by making your big numbers. Moving on to the second skill, it's when this unit is placed on Vanguard Circle, or when your G unit with Coral and its original card name strides on top of this card. You can choose a card from your hand, put it into the soul, and you draw 2 cards, and then you choose one of your Vanguards, and it gets a continuous ability that says all the units in your front row get plus 5,000 power for every 2 cards with Coral in their card name in your soul. So there's a couple reasons why this stride skill is so good. Number 1, the cost for it is shoving a card into your soul. In this deck, you mainly want to shove Coral cards into the soul, and if you don't have a Coral card to shove into the soul, you probably will have any of the other cards in your hand that activate from the soul, because there's a lot of soul activating effects in this deck. So we have Lalana here, activates from the soul. Mirtoa has an effect, activates from the soul. Lyrica has an effect that activates from the soul, and then otherwise, if you have any other corals, you just want to put those in anyways. And then Hanoka, our crit trigger, also has an effect when it's in the soul. So you don't really have to worry about the cost ever, because the cost is just a bonus of you getting to put a card into your soul and use the ability. Then on top of that, you draw 2 cards, so you're not really minusing, because you're going to get a plus probably off of whatever you put into the soul. But you're not only like plussing 2 cards when you draw, but also every card in your front row continuously gets plus 5,000 for every 2 cards with Coral in its name. So by the time you ride to grade 3, you can actually get to like 6 to 8 Corals if you're lucky, Coral name cards in your soul, and then that will be plus 15k or plus 20k to your front row. And those numbers a lot of times are too big, way too big for your opponent to guard. Also, with Dreamer Crook, the stand trigger, it allows you to bounce the card and call a card after the battle that it boosts, and it goes back to the deck. So not only does it bounce and call, but since the skill that it gives the Vanguard is continuous, whatever gets called back out will be getting the power as well, which is very, 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 very devastating to your opponent. But you guys will see in the matches. I literally had to playtest a bunch of matches where it was really hard for me to even get to Stride because I kept killing my opponent before Stride would even happen. Then our backup grade 3 is Shangri-La Star Coral. You probably never, ever, ever want to ride this card. Out of personal preference, the other grade 3 is just so much better. But we do run it purely because it is a coral card that we can shove into our soul, make our Vanguard power bigger, or make our like Vanguard's on stride skill bigger with it. And then also, I guess in the case that we have to ride it, we do want to ride a coral and still have a coral Vanguard because there are skills in our deck that require that we have a coral Vanguard. So this was the best backup coral Vanguard because the other one is the original Aura Star Coral, and we can't run that because it has the same name as the first grade 3. So that's why we run Shangri-La Star Coral as our backup. So let's talk about its skills that you'll probably never use. First, it has a Limit Break 4 skill, which means if you have 4 or more damage during your main phase, you can activate this skill by Counter Blasting 1, Soul Blasting 1. Then you choose one of your Bermuda Triangle rearguards, return it to your hand, and this unit gets plus 3,000 power. And then you can choose up to 1 card with Coral in its name from your hand, put into your soul, and if you do, draw 2 cards. So kind of similar to our new Aura Star Coral, but just not as good, not as consistent. And then it has a secondary Vanguard skill that is continuous. If you have an Aura Star Coral in your soul, this card gets plus 2,000 power. So it can become a 13k base if we have this in our soul. But we would really rather just re-ride this so that this can be a 13k base and be our Vanguard instead of Shangri-La. So Shangri-La is just meh, not that good. It does have a third ability, which is Lord, which means it says if you have a unit without the same clan as this unit cannot attack. So Lord is mostly useless against, except against Nubatama. So when Nubatama makes you play cards with like Rene, this card will not be able to attack if you play it through Rene because it has Lord. So something to keep in mind. Moving on to our grade 2s, we have 4 Shiny Star Coral. This is our grade 2 Coral. Very, very, very solid card. It has 2 abilities. First is the continuous Vanguard ability. It says if you have a card named Fresh Star Coral in your soul, this card gets plus 1,000 power. So Fresh Star Coral is our grade 1. So basically, if you have the grade 1 Coral in your soul, then you get plus 1,000 power continuously, being a 10k base. And then its secondary ability on Vanguard Circle is when this unit's attack hits a Vanguard, choose up to one of your Bermuda Triangle rearguards in the front row, return it to your hand. And if you have a card named Fresh Star Coral in your soul, choose up to 1 Bermuda Triangle rearguard in your back row and return it to your hand. So you can basically play a booster and a little side card to attack. And you attack with the side card, attack with the Vanguard. When your opponent lets it hit, because they most likely will, you bounce the side card and you bounce your booster, which usually if they're Lyrica and Miratoa, you can next turn play them again to use their on-play skills to build more advantage. Then we have 4 active pink Lalana. Lalana has 2 skills. It has an auto rearguard ability that says when this unit attacks a Vanguard, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Coral in its name, this unit gets plus 2,000 power. So it basically is an 11k attacker. And then the second ability can be activated during the main phase if it's in your soul and you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Coral in its name. Counterbox 1, put this card into your hand and then call it a rearguard circle and soul charge 1. So make sure that your soul stays fresh. You could also have a chance of soul charging a Coral, which during Aura Star turns are so powerful. It's ridiculous. And then moving on to our last grade 2, we have 4 light blue Heartbeat Miratoa. Miratoa has 2 abilities. The first is when it's placed on Vanguard or rearguard circle. You can choose a card with Coral in its name from your hand or rearguard circle, put it into your soul, and then you can draw a card. And then the second ability activates while it's in the soul. You can activate during the main phase, put this card into your drop zone, and then if the number of cards in your soul is 3 or more, after that, draw a card. So it gets you deeper into your deck. Something that I really like doing with Miratoa is like if I ride Fresh Star Coral and I check the top 7 cards of the deck for a Aura Star or a Shiny Star from Angelic Star skill, then I can actually use Mirutoa skill to shove a card into my soul that's coral from my hand, draw a card, and then after that I can search top 7 from Fresh Star for a shiny star, and then ride it, and then use Mirutoa skill to draw a card. So it's just, you guys will notice that there's a lot of combos in this deck that you can do. It's very, very consistent in the early game. Like, I don't think I've ever gotten in a really bad situation in this deck where I just didn't like it at all. It's mostly fixable by all the cards that you get and all the cards that you have access to. So yeah, moving on to our grade 1s, we have 4 Fresh Star Coral. This is our grade 1 Coral. It has the same ability as the grade 2, except it says if you have a card named Angelic Star Coral in your soul, this unit gets plus 1000 power. So this card is 7k base and can become 8k base continuously as long as you have the starter in your soul. And then it has a skill that says when a grade 2 Bermuda Triangle unit other than Shiny Star Coral rides upon this unit, if you have a card named Angelic Star Coral in your soul, you can look at up to 7 cards from the top of your deck, search your deck for, or search for up to 1 card named Shiny Star Coral among them, and ride it and shuffle your deck. So this allows you to fix your ride chain. Obviously the combo with Mirutoa that I just talked about, pretty good. Then we have 2 Preserving Talent Shandi. This is basically just a stride fodder since we don't run Loris cards in this deck, so we just discard it to stride whenever we can instead of Loris cards. Then we have 4 Transcend Idol Aqua. Transcend Idol Aqua has 2 abilities. The first one is Sentinel, but it says if all the Sentinels in your deck are Aqua, you can include up to 6. So you can actually run up to 6 PGs with Aqua, but we choose to run 4 because we don't have enough space to run 6. And then also Aqua skill is really good in this deck just because you PG using it, but you instead of discarding a card, you put a card into the soul from your hand. So you can have a coral in your hand and actually put into your soul to set up for next turn to make your power more prominent when you're attacking your opponent. It also has a secondary effect to its PG skill that says if the number of Sentinels in your drop zone is 2 or more, choose all your rear guards and they cannot be hit until the end of the battle. So pretty useful. Then we have 4 grade 1s called Admire Successor Lyrica. Lyrica is super important in this deck. Thins your deck endlessly, and also has a soul ability that allows us to get use out of it should we have to shove to soul. So the first skill is probably the most useful skill. When this unit is placed on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, reveal the top 5 cards from your deck. Search for 1 grade 2 or less card with coral in its name, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. And then if you do, choose 1 card from your hand and put it into your soul. So a lot of times I'll just use Lyrica, and whatever I find off the top 5 that's a coral, I shove it immediately into soul. Unless I'm in a bad situation, then I keep the coral in my hand so that I know that I'm getting ready to ride Mirutoa and I want to use the skill or something like that. Just very simple things like that, and you want to be prepared for what your opponent can do to you. Then its activation soul skills during the main phase. If you have a grade 3 or greater card with coral in its name, you can choose a grade 2 or greater card from your hand, put into your soul, and then you can put this card into your hand, call it to rear guard, then you choose one of your other units and it gets plus 2000 power. So pretty useful. Then for our starter, we have 1 Angelic Star Coral. Angelic Star Coral is basically just our ride chain starter. When you ride a Fresh Star, which is the grade 1 upon it, then you can look at up to 7 cards from the top of your deck and you get the grade 2 Coral or the grade 3 Aura Star Coral and put into your hand. So pretty good there. And then the secondary effect is when a Bermuda Triangle other than Fresh Star Coral rides this unit, you can move this card back to a Rearguard Circle. So as Forerunner, as long as you're not riding the right card that you're supposed to be riding. So you want to ride Fresh Star Coral whenever you have it. If not, just call it back to Rearguard Circle and you'll probably have a Mirutoa at some point that'll be able to shove it back into Soul, so don't worry about that. Then for our triggers, we run 4 crit, 8 stand, and 4 heal. For our crit, we run 4 Little Pride Honoka. Honoka has a hand and soul ability that says if you have a Vanguard with coral in its name, you can put it into your drop zone, and then from your hand or your soul, and then look at the top 5 cards of the deck, reveal 1 coral card, and put it into your hand or soul and shuffle your deck. So I mostly only use this card when it's in the soul, because when it's in my hand, I consider it as a shield value, and I don't want to just drop shield value for no reason, because I might not get a coral and I might whiff and not get anything. So I pretty much only use it when I really need a grade 3 coral and I'm on the grade 2 coral, or when it's already in my soul and I can't use it as guard anyway, so I just use the skill when it's in my soul. Then we talked about this a little bit earlier, but we have 4 Dreamer Crook. So Crook has Harmony, and it has a Generation Break 1 ability that says if this unit is in the Harmony state, it gets an ability. At the end of the battle that this unit boosted, you can put this card on the top of your deck, choose one of your other rear guards, return it to your hand, call 1 card from your hand, and shuffle your deck. So not only do you get to put a stand trigger back to your deck, but you get to call a card for a brand new attack. And with the power that's coming from Aura Star Coral, like most likely that's going to be an attack that your opponent has to put a little effort into as far as guarding. And then after that, you might you have more of a chance to check a stand trigger, stand your rear guards again, and attack again. Then we have 4 Jump to the Water Surface Amelie. So what Amelie does is it has Harmony, and it has a Generation Break 1 ability. It says if this unit's in Harmony, it gets a skill as well. The skill of this one is you can put it into your soul during your main phase, draw a card, and choose one of your other rear guards, and it gets plus 2,000 power. So kind of like a Margot clone, kind of not. It has to be Harmony, which is easy enough. But you just play it down, play something else in the same column, use the skill, shove it into the soul, draw, give something 2k. Then we have 4 Chocho Marina. Chocho Marina is basically our new heal trigger that says when we G-Guard using it, if we have 2 heals in our drop zone, we can bind 2 heals, and then we can counter charge or soul charge. Pretty good there. And then moving into our G zone, we have our ultimate stride, which is 0 Dragon of Distance C, Megiddo. So Megiddo is our ultimate stride that I've talked about a couple days in a row, so I'll make it short and sweet. Your ultimate stride can only be released when you have 3 face-up G units already in the G zone, and then you can also have to discard the same card as whatever's on your Vanguard to go into it. And then when it comes onto Vanguard Circle, you counterboss 2, choose up to 5 cards in total from your hand or drop zone, call them to separate rearguard circle until the end of the turn. They get plus 5,000 power. And then at the end of the battle, this unit attacked, like you can choose one of your other rearguards and exchange positions with this unit. So basically you call 5 rearguards. It's kind of like a last ditch effort or a last ditch resort. The only thing that I can think of is calling like a lot of when your opponent's at 5 damage and you're on the ropes. If you don't think that, usually going into a coral stride is almost always better. But if you don't think that you can mount an offensive against your opponent because you have no field, no hand, and the only way that you can win is going to Megiddo, then just go into Megiddo and use its skill to call out a bunch of Aura Star Corals or Lalanas. That's probably what's best. And then just attack your opponent a bunch of times. Hopefully you check stand triggers, you can attack some more times. Then we have 2 Chocho popular favorites, Hirwa. Seems like every Bermuda deck is running like 2 of these. Just seems like the number to run because it is a restander in our deck and it is very useful. Because restanders are just, you know, good in any deck, I feel like. But its activation skill is turn a card face up from your G zone. This unit gets a continuous skill that says all the units with Chocho in your front row get plus 5,000 power for each of your open rearguard circle. And then the Generation Break 3 is at the end of the battle, this unit attacks, choose up to 3 of your rear guards, put them on the bottom of your deck, and if 3 cards were put, you stand this unit, and it gets -2 drive. So restands on your opponent, styles on them a little bit, and then helps you get deeper in the game and helps you win the game. And if you G-Guard first, you can actually go into Chocho Tirua, use the skill to flip a Frontier Star, and then you can do that instead of going into our Arcadia Star Coral if you really want to. Then we have our main offensive stride of the deck, which we almost never get to because the offensiveness before this card touches the field is so heavy. But it is Frontier Star Coral. Frontier Star Coral skill is when it attacks, you can counterboss 1, choose a face-up card from your G-Zone, or sorry, choose a face-down card from your G-Zone and turn it face-up. Then you soul charge 1, choose up the same number of rear guards as cards in your soul with coral in its name, return them to your hand. For each unit returned with this effect to the hand, this unit gets plus 5,000 power. And then if the number of face-up cards named Frontier Star Coral in your G-Zone is 2 or more, you draw a card, choose up to 2 cards from your hand, and call them to separate rearguard circle. So basically what you want to do is first stride, every stride, you want to flip a Frontier Star Coral somehow, some way, and then you want to go into Frontier Star Coral, and then flip a Frontier Star Coral so that you have 2 Frontier Star Corals face up. And then after that, you can go into the last Frontier Star if they survive after that, and just flip something that's not Frontier Star Coral, because you won't have any Frontier Stars left. So pretty good card, very, very powerful. My opponent almost never survives just because of the amount of attacks that comes with this turn. Then we have 4 Arcadia Star Coral. Arcadia Star Coral has an activation skill. It's Vanguard once per turn. Choose a face down card with Coral in its card name from your G zone and turn it face up. If you have a heart card with Coral in its name, choose one of your rear guards, return it to your hand, and then search your deck for a card, put it into your soul. So you probably want to get one of the cards that activate has an effect in your soul, or a Coral card, depending on what you think is best. And then choose the same number of rear guards as the number of cards with Coral in its name in your soul. They get 2,000 power, and this unit gets plus 10,000 power, and then you shuffle your deck. So basically, this card is just a setup card for Frontier Star. Pretty self-explanatory. Then we have 1 perfect performance Ange to fight against Link Joker. Link Joker kind of is a not very aggressive deck, but also not very defensive deck as well. So we can kind of kill them before they are able to lock out most of our stuff. If they do manage to lock out most of our stuff, we do have this 1 Ange that we can go into to kind of like reset our board. But speaking of Ange, its skill is activation skill once per turn, Generation Break 2, Counter Boss 2, and choose a face down card from your G zone, turn it face up. Choose any number of cards on your fighter's circles other than Vanguard circles, and then you return them to the hand. This unit gets plus 5,000 power for every returned card. If you return 5 or more, you draw a card. And if you return 7 or more, this card gets plus 1 drive. So you can return all your cards and all your opponent's cards, and that'll probably give you at least 7 if your opponent has at least 2 cards on the board, which they probably will if you're playing Link Joker. And then you'll get quad drive and 35,000 power at the very least. Moving on to our G zone, we have 1 Best Sparkle Sandy. Sorry guys, we've talked about Sandy multiple times in our different Bermuda builds, but basically we've been running this Sandy Ellie combo as G Guardians in most of our decks. It's pretty good. Basically, Sandy says when you place this unit on guard circle, you can choose a face down G Guardian from your G zone, turn it face up. If you do, this card gets plus 5,000 shield for every 2 cards in your hand. So the bigger hand you have, the more shield value it'll be able to make for you. And then after that, you can counter boss 1 to add an additional 5,000 shield to it. So we always want to flip Ellie with this skill, because Ellie says that when it's on the guard circle, it gets plus 10,000 shield for each face-up Ellie in your G zone and Sentinel in your drop zone. So the more PGs in your drop zone, the more Ellie's face-up in your G zone, the higher power this gets, and the more likely it's going to be a no pass for your opponent when you use it. And then also Generation Break 2, you Soul Blast 1 when this card is placed in, when this card is put into your G zone face up, you can Soul Blast 1 just to turn this card back face down to reuse it again for another turn or another G guard during that turn or whatever. Then we have 1 Highest Society Citron. Citron just a 36k block in exchange for playing a grade 1 or higher grade 1 or higher rear guard to the rear guard circle when this card is placed. So not really much to say about Citron. It's a very good G guard, but only when you can't use Ellie and Sandy. So we're opening back up our card fight area here so that we can start seeing our matches. I actually recorded 4 matches with Coral because, like I said, it was really hard to get it to the point where my opponent would actually survive to Stride. So we use the skill of Lyrica, top 5, because we don't have the grade 1. We put a fresh star into our soul. Our opponent attacks us, they hit us, use their starter, they don't get an alt mile. So we ride Shiny Star Coral, we use Meritora to put the grade 0 into the soul. We look at Lyrica, top 5, we don't get anything. So we attack for 9, then 9, he guards, and then we attack for 17. He no guards, so we bounce 2 of the on-place cards back to our hand. He attacks us for 16, we take it. And he attacks our rear guard for 9, which he can have easily. So we go into Aura Star Coral, put a card in the soul, and then our Vanguard has, in our soul there's 4 Coral cards, so we get plus 10,000 power to our front row. We check a crit and a stand trigger, so we stand our rear guard. And then our opponent doesn't have a grade 3, so they literally just quit the game because I figured, they probably figured that after this, like, I would just beat their face in with Coral, which I definitely was going to, because if they didn't do anything, I could either use the new rules to Stride on them, or I could just, since we're playing old rules, I could just re-ride Aura Star Coral, shove Hononka into the soul, draw 2, and my front row would be getting plus, I have actually 5 Coral cards in my soul, so after I re-ride, this would be 6. and then I would get plus 15k to my front row. So there's no actual way that he would survive that. So he just decided to quit right there. So this deck actually makes a lot of opponents quit just because like they realize when like it's too much power to actively do stuff to them, and it's just pretty stupid at times. Next up, we're fighting against an Arcami deck, who we ride Fresh Star. We let them go, they go, and then we call out a board to attack. We attack for 9, then 9 he takes it, and then he attacks for 7, or we attack for 17, bounce 2 of our on-place cards. He attacks us, we intercept, so that we won't get destroyed by the rear guard. And then we use the skill of Aura Star Coral to add cards, and then we have a lot of cards in our a lot of coral cards in our soul, and we check double stand, so we double stand our rear guards, and then we just attack for 27, 29, and then he has 2 grade 3s left in his hand, so he can't even block. So we killed him before we even went to grade before he even went to grade 3, which was kind of unfair and kind of stupid at the same time. Then next up, we're going to have Coral Game 3. So we're playing against Aqua Force this time around, Blue Wave specifically. We ride Fresh Star Coral, we get the grade 3. We use Lyrica Skill to look at top 5, put a Coral in there. And then we actually decide to get the Coral out and put another card in our soul because we're going to have to ride Mirtoa because we don't have the grade 2. So we actually ride Mirtoa, we get Shiny Star. We use the skill to put a card in, draw a card. We use another Mirtoa to put a card in, draw a card. Then we attack with both of our rear guards, then attack with Vanguard. He takes it, so we bounce 2 on place cards. Then he attacks our rear guard, which we don't really care about. We use Aura Star, and then we use Mirtoa to put a card in. And then we move a card up. We call Lyrica, top 5, get nothing. And then we use the skill of Lalana to call it out to the rear guard circle, soul charge a card, which happens to be a coral. So now we have coral cards in our soul, and we check a stand trigger. And then he just quits the game when we check a stand trigger. Even though he could have blocked it, he probably figured that it would be way too much. I had a G-Guard and a Stride Fodder in my hand and 2 crooks, so the next turn after that was going to be extremely painful for him anyways, and he probably would have died. And then let's talk about our Coral Game 4, for which our opponent actually stayed around the entire time, so we're actually really grateful to our opponent because he never gave up. So we're playing against Regalia. Our opponent ends, we ride Lyrica, get a card, put it in, we check a stand trigger, he checks a crit, he gets a PG, rides it, uses the skill to reveal the top 3, and then he puts 1 card in his soul, plays his grade 1, reveals his grade 3 so that he can get the card that he wants, and then he attacks us. He does get a trigger to pass, so we ride Lalana. This is actually like a bad game on our part because we're not getting the regular ride chain shenanigans in this game, which is probably why he survived this long. But we ride Aura Star Coral, which is really all you need to do in this deck. We use Lalana skill to call it out to the rear guard circle, and then we have at least 2 coral cards in our soul, so our front row gets +5. Our opponent strides into Minerva, looks at the top 4 cards, puts 1 in the soul, puts the other 2 in drop zone, 1 into hand as well. And then he calls Freya to draw a card, and then he puts 2 Regalia cards into his soul. He uses Minerva's skill to Soul Blast 3 Regalias and flip a copy of it, and then it gets +10k. And then he uses the skill of Expel Angel to put 3 cards at the bottom, draw 1, and it gets +3. So then he attacks for 16 to our rear guard. We let it go because we don't really care about our rear guards. He attacks our Vanguard. He gets a crit, a stand, and another crit. And I was like, please not another crit. So he double crit us. We got a heal trigger and nothing else. And then we were able to just use a 10k to block. We stride into Arcadia Star, we bounce a card, we shove a card into Soul, we call Double Crook and Lalana, and then we use Lyrica to look at top 5. For a Coral card, we don't get it. Our front row gets plus 10, and then we attack for 21 to his Vanguard. He takes it, gets no trigger. We use Crook skill to call Lyrica back. This time we do get a Coral into Soul, so this time it's plus 15 because we needed that Coral to increase our power. And then we attack with the other rear guard. He's forced to guard with 2 10s, and then we attack again, forced to guard with 2 10s, and then we attack for 57. He PGs, and we check no stand trigger, unfortunately. If we did check a stand trigger, we probably would have put him in a very precarious position, / he wouldn't be able to live. But he goes into Minerva again, calls Bragi out, and then he uses the skill of Bragi, put 2 cards into a Soul, and then his Vanguard gets plus 6, and this gets plus 6. And then uses Minerva skill to attack my rear guard. My Vanguard's 13k base, so I just guard with a 5. And then he attacks us with Minerva, Soul Blast 6. So that he can restand all of his rear guard and stuff after that. So I PG, shove a card into Soul. Like I said, very good in this deck because anything that you shove into Soul probably can be used. So he restands all of his stuff. He can't hit us with the other rear guard, and then he just attacks our rear guard. We guard because we want that Lyrica, and then we go into Frontier Star. We use non-stride skill to call, and then we call Harmony, put melee into the Soul, draw a card, which didn't really help because we drew a heal. We use 2 Miratoas to draw 2 cards. Then we use the Lyrica from Soul to put a Miratoa in, call it out to rearguard circle, give another card plus 2k. Then we check the top 5 to put a Coral card in, and then we use another Lyrica, put another card in, top 5 for a Coral card, no luck. And then we use Miratoa to draw a card, and then our front row gets plus 20k, so we attack for 40. So our opponent guards for 21, 31, 46, and then they have to guard 5 more. And then we attack for 31. He guards with 2 10s and a 5. We use Crook skill to bounce, call back Lyrica, no targets, but it does get 20k again. So we attack for 27. He asks us why 27, and we say because the stride skill is continuous. And he was like, oh, okay, so then he PGs. And then we use the skill of Frontier Star, Soul Blast 1, bounce cards to our hand, which we should just bounce all the cards and call 2 out. We do get one Coral off the top 5, off of one of our top 5s, and so our front row gets 20k still. And then we checked a stand and a crit, so basically he wasn't able to guard that, and that ended up being game 4, which was pretty ridiculous of a loss for him, but honestly still really, really good for us. But basically that just allowed us to win the game. Usually most people don't survive to that point, but yeah, I'm happy that I was able to show you guys a game where you did survive to that point. But like I said, that has been the FutureFight deck for Coral. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up on the video. Helps a lot more than you guys think. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to stay updated and support. And be sure to click the bell button next to the subscription button if you want to get a notification every time one of our videos goes live. Be sure to check the description down below for our social medias as well, which would be Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you want to support the channel a little more than liking and subscribing, those options are in our description down below as well, which would be our Patreon and our merch store. But with that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.